Hey guys, Mike here with the new Velotric Breeze. Now this is their newest lightweight e-bike commuter, coming in at just 42 pounds. It's got a price tag of $17.99 and it's packed with some smart tech features. Plus, Velotric also included this into their lineup of bikes having their Comfort Max package, which makes your comfort while you're riding the bike kind of the focus of the bike. So I've spent a week with it, putting it through its paces. I've got some thoughts on it I'd like to share, so stick around and let's do a deep dive on the new Velotric Breeze. All right guys, so the new Velotric Breeze, like I said, this is a city or commuter style e-bike, basically kind of a city Dutch cruiser style bar up top, giving you a nice upright, relaxed riding position. It's priced at $17.99, and when it comes to certifications, this one is pretty fully certified. We've got ISO 4210 for durability testing, and we've got UL 2849 for the entire bike, and then UL 2271 for the battery safety, so fully covered there. Now they say this bike weighs 48 pounds. When I got this one for testing, I put it up on our scale. It came in at 42 pounds without the battery. When I put that battery back in, it was about 50 pounds, like 50.2, and the battery itself is right around 8 pounds. Now, this bike comes in two frame sizes. There's a regular and a large. The regular fits riders from 4'11 up to 5'8, and the large, like I have here for testing, fits riders from 5'6 all the way up to 6'4. Now, I'm 5'11, and when I rode this bike, I found it to fit me really well. But I would also say that this is one of the times I rode the bike that I felt like I could still confidently recommend this to people that are over 6'1", even 6'2". I think even on the higher side of their 6'3", 6'4 range, you'll probably still be able to make this work, which you can't always say for e-bikes. They tend to get a little too optimistic with their ranges, but this one still has a lot of adjustability in the seat post and with that massive adjustable stem up front. I kind of feel like no matter where you are on the height range, you can make this bike work for you as long as you get the right size relative to your height. Now, some geo numbers, before geo, let's go over some colors. So this is their violet purple, but they also have a lot of other colors that they brought in for this Velotric Breeze model. They've got an ocean mist, which is more of a blue color. They've got a classic scarlet red. They've got a slate gray and a satin white. So you can kind of find whatever color works for your style and taste. Now, some geo numbers for this large frame here. The wheelbase is going to be about 44 inches from front hub to rear hub. The standover height, so the lowest point to access the bike from the ground, is about 16.1 inches, which is relatively low, making getting on and off easier if you have stability or concerns with your balance. Now the seat post has about 8 inches of adjustability here in it. And then your handlebar up top and stem has an adjustable stem, giving you more reach, letting you extend or reduce that reach. Right now the reach is about 15 inches. It remains relatively low because the handlebars with that Dutch swept-back style kind of keep you more upright. So a relatively short reach, which ultimately equates to a more comfortable ride. And the max payload on here is 330 pounds. Now, when it comes to wheels and tires, they went with a 27.5 alloy wheel. It's a double-walled aluminum wheel, and they wrapped it in a 27.5 by 2.2 inch Kenda tire with a nice commuter tread pattern. I really like these tires. They were smooth on the road, very little rolling resistance, no noise at all, and they still have some pretty decent traction on them. If you're commuting or riding around on a day with wet paths, I think these tires will do really well. Now, in terms of mounting points, so we do have quite a few here. We have mounting points for rear racks and fenders in the rear. We have mounting points for front racks or baskets up front. And then you also have racks for a front fender, as well as two mounting bosses on the seat tube for things like a water bottle cage or other type of accessory. Now, I will say I feel like not including fenders and racks with this bike was a bit of a missed opportunity for Velotric. When you look at their lineup, the next model up from this is not much more. It's the Discover 2, and that one does come with fenders and racks. And I think that's something that people would like to see on a bike designated for commuting. So if I had to give one quick, just improvement to the company, that would be toss in the fenders and racks on a bike like this. Now, when it comes to lighting, they did hook you up with full front to back lighting and turn signals. Up front, we have a 400 lumen, so super bright LED light that you can adjust the angle of it up front. And then they built into the rear seat stays these really nice looking brake lights, tail lights, and turn signals. They act as all three. Now, one thing Velotric does that's kind of cool and unique to the brand is they allow you to change how your brake lights and tail lights are presented when you have them on. You have three options. Basically, you can have them steady on, you can have them flashing all the time, or you can have them steady on and then flashing when you're braking, just to kind of increase that visibility from the rear. And then you've got your turn signals integrated on both sides that you use through the control handle up top. So when it comes to the power system on the new Velotric Breeze, it's a 48-volt system, and the rear motor is going to be a hub motor. Now this motor is rated at 750 watts nominally, but it can peak it up to 1150, and it puts out 65 Newton meters of torque. Now this bike has, when you talk about e-bike motors, there's generally two types of sensors you're going to get, either a cadence sensor or a torque sensor. This bike does come with both. It's one of the unique things, again, that Velotric does that I really like. They call it sensor swap. It allows you to switch between a cadence or torque sensor easily through the display or through the app on your phone. It's just a couple taps of a button and you get to feel the bike in using both a cadence sensor or a torque sensor. Then you can figure out which one you like to use, which feels better for your preferred riding style, and then just pick between the two on your daily rides, or leave it in one and just ride with the one based on what you like. It's kind of a cool feature that I wish more brands would do, and I like that Velotric ships their bikes with both sensors and just lets you be the judge on what you like better. Now, when it comes to riding modes, Velotric is also famous for what I call the 15 riding modes. It sounds like a lot, and that's because it kind of is a lot. You have three modes being Eco, Trail, and Boost, and then within each of the three modes, you have 5 levels of pedal assist. Now, on one hand, a lot of you guys are really going to like having that many options and fine-tuning your motor, and if you're like me, I think it's a little bit too much, but nonetheless, you have it there if you want it. And what I found works for me is I just put it in Trail or Boost, and then I just use the 5 levels of PAS within those. And that keeps it pretty simple for me. Now, when it comes to the battery, we've got a 48-volt battery here with 13.7 amp hours, and it is UL 2271 certified and does come with a 2-year warranty. Now, you can remove this for security and storage reasons. I'll show you how that works right now. So each Velotric bike will come with a set of keys. There is a key slot right here on the right. You'll just flip that 180 degrees and that will release the battery. Like I said, this is UL 2271 certified. This battery weighs right at 8 pounds, and they say you'll get up to 70 miles out of its 627 watt hours of juice. So of course I put that to the test. Now on minimum assistance, using trail mode, so the middle of the three, minimum assistance, I was able to get 72 miles. So just eking out their estimation of 70 miles. And then on max assist, so level 5, I was still able to cover 34 miles on a single charge. So all in all, performed really well and met their expectations. Now to put it back, you'll simply drop in the bottom first and then click in the top and you're good to go. All right, so in terms of componentry and drivetrain, we'll start back here. We've got a Shimano Altus 8-speed rear derailleur for the 8-speed drivetrain on the Velotric Breeze. In the back, we've got an 11-32 cassette with a KMC 8-speed chain. And the chainring up front is a 46-tooth narrow wide chainring with a chain guard built into the crankset. Now the cranks here are alloy cranks at 170 millimeters, and they come with flat plastic pedals that do have some traction studs and reflectors on them. Now in terms of braking power, they went with a pretty tried and true setup. It's the Tektro hydraulic disc brake system with 2-piston calipers and 180 millimeter rotors that have a thickness of 1.8 millimeters. Now this setup is used across a wide variety of e-bikes, everything from lightweight fitness commuters, kind of like something like this, even on heavier cargo bikes we see that weigh quite a bit more. Now I will say 2-piston calipers with 180 millimeter rotors, it's almost too much braking, but that's not really a thing. To have really confident braking is always a good thing. I'd rather have too much than too little, but this brake setup works really, really well for this bike being so lightweight with that hydraulic disc brake power. Now, in terms of the saddle up front, we have the Velotric Comfort Max saddle. This is part of their Comfort Max lineup. It's got a series of basically comfort features that add to the overall ride of the bike. And that's everything from something as simple as the seat with spring supported and lots of padding to the adjustable stem and the ergonomic grips. That's part of their Comfort Max package. And really, the bike is very comfortable to ride. Now, you don't have any suspension, and some people might think that would make it more uncomfortable to ride, but I would say on a bike with commuter tread pattern tires, It's not really meant to be going off-road, and any impacts you're gonna feel coming off a curb or a pothole are mostly handled by the volume in the tires and the seat. I never thought when I rode this bike all week long that it felt like it needed a suspension fork. Some of you guys will really want one on there, but I found it just wasn't really necessary and would probably be overkill for a bike like this. So we do have a rigid aluminum fork up front. Up here in the cockpit, as far as cable management goes, everything is wrapped up into these cable wraps and then routed into the frame. And then we have a 680 millimeter wide alloy bar. It is a Dutch style bar, so it kind of sweeps back towards the rider, keeping you in that upright position. On both ends, we've got lock-on rubber ergonomic grips that kind of have pads, rests for your palms. You have Tektro brake levers on both ends, your e-bike bell, and your 8-speed trigger shifters for the Shimano derailleur. On this side, we have our controls for the display and our push throttle. Now, let's take a closer look at the display itself, because there's quite a few things you can do in the display, and then we'll jump into the app and talk about that as well. All right, so this is the home screen on the Velotric Breeze. This is the shared display you'll find on other bikes from Velotric from their newest lineup, things like the Nomad 2 and Discover 2. It's a full color display. Now, it's got a lot of info on it. So down here at the bottom, we'll just start with those data screens. So those can be cycled through by hitting the mode button or menu button on the controls. So right here on the left, the odometer right now is 230 miles, plus total time on the bike. You can cycle through and get motor temperature and controller temperature. I really like this feature. This is something that's just handy to be able to look at. You've also got a trip meter and a trip timer, as well as average speed and max speed, and then calories and CO2 savings estimates, and then you're back to your odometer. Now up top, we've got a battery bar and percentage indicator of how much of your battery is remaining. And on the right is just the Velotric branding. Here in the center, we've got the speed that can be in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. On the left is your riding mode. It's currently in trail, but by hitting this button on the controls, you can switch between the 3 modes. You've got Eco, Trail, and Boost. And then again, 5 levels of PAS within each. So 5 levels of PAS within each of those 3 modes, giving us the 15 riding modes. Down below that is a headlight indicator that if you hold the plus button, will turn on the headlight indicator. You'll see that come on. Same thing to turn it off. You just hold that plus button. And down here, letting you know which motor sensor we're using, which is currently in the torque sensor, but there's also the cadence sensor you can switch. And so we'll go into the menus and I'll show you how to do a lot of those things right now. So to get into the advanced settings, you're just gonna hold the menu button, and that takes us to the advanced settings. First things first is the speed limit. You can go in here, and Velotric uniquely lets you adjust the throttle all the way up to 28. That's not something many of the brands do. You'll need to check with your local laws to see if you're even allowed to ride that fast on throttle, but just having that as an option, I think a lot of people will find that nice. Now you can also limit the throttle here. So you can take it as low, I think it's 12 miles an hour. Yeah, so anywhere between 12 and 28 you can limit this thing to, which is really cool. Same with the total pedal assist speed. You can go as low as 20 or as high as 28. Now we'll just save that the way it is, and we'll back out. Next one is going to be sensor swap. This is where you pick between a cadence or torque sensor, and it's just as simple as it sounds. You can pick between torque or cadence, and then whichever one you're on, save it. Now, if I go to cadence mode, it gives you a little warning that says when you use a cadence sensor, battery consumption will be higher than with a torque sensor. Do you still want to proceed? That's just a good reminder if you're low on battery juice and you do decide to swap it, depending on how far home you got to go, that may be a good reminder that could be a good time or not to use that cadence sensor. So we'll go down here. This one's self-explanatory. You can clear your trip data. This one is also pretty self-explanatory. You can adjust the screen brightness, which for filming, let's see if we'll go as high as we can right there. So we'll save that at 5. It was on auto, which is kind of nice also. Oops. So now I'll hold M to get back to the advanced settings. I went back a little too far. So next after screen brightness is riding mode. That's just gonna let you pick between Eco, Trail, and Boost like you can already do through the control buttons. Next is going to be rear light mode. This is where I talked about with the brake lights and tail lights, you can adjust how they behave. So with the 3 modes, you've got mode 1, which is it's always on, but when you brake, it brightens like a traditional brake light. The next one is it's always flashing, And then when you brake, it gets brighter. And then the third mode is it's always on when you're riding, and it enhances or gets brighter and flashes when you're braking. I think that's a good one as well. So we'll just save that and back out. Oh, it backed out too far. So go back in, and after rear light mode, we have auto light. This is just going to be adding the headlight into an auto light sensing position to where it will sense the ambient light outside. And if it gets dark, it'll kick on. And if it gets bright enough, it'll kick back off. Here you can do auto power off, how long the bike takes to power down itself when you walk away, should you not power it off yourself. Here you can limit the throttle like we showed you earlier. Cruise control, this will just allow you to turn on or off the cruise control, which is a really nice feature. If you're at a speed you like and don't feel like doing any pedaling, you can set cruise control and just ride that way. Turn signals, click. This is kind of a nice feature. You can use the turn signals with the directional pad, and you'll see the turn signal indicators on the bike. But let me show you what this does. So right now, if I hit the turn signal, you can hear that beeping. That's an audible reminder that it's on. Some people will like that. I always forget these turn signals are on, so I like that. But if you don't like it, you can just turn it on in that setting. So I'll turn that off, go back into the settings. And we can go to the next one, which is going to be connect to app. Here you'll get a QR code. You simply just scan it with the app, and that will pair the bike. And then we have Find My. This is where you'll pair your phone with your Apple Find My technology. Should the bike go missing, this has an internal almost AirTag capability to where you'll be able to locate it with GPS in the event that you don't know where your bike is. And then you can set units between miles per hour and kilometers per hour. And here you can calibrate the sensor, which will just have you take your feet off the pedals, you hit it, it'll wait about 10 seconds while it's doing what it does, and it'll just say you're good to go. And then here you can get version info about your software, firmware numbers of all your components on the bike. Good for when you're talking to support if you ever have an issue. To back out, you'll just hit the back button and you're back to the home screen. And if you notice, we're now in cadence over here because we did switch between torque and cadence. But that wraps up the display. Now I'll show you the app, which is very similar to a lot of these, but it's just in more of an app format. So I'll do a quick walkthrough of the Velotric app next. All right, so this is the home screen on the Velotric display and the app. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to connect to the app. So you're just gonna hold the menu button. That'll take us into our advanced settings. Scroll down to connect to app. It'll give you a QR code. You'll just hit pair my bike, select your bike, and then the QR, as soon as it reads it, it will automatically set it up. It'll let you name it, add your info. All right, so I'll just give it a quick name and then hit finish. All right, and so I'm gonna put this in the phone holder here and kind of just show you some of the things and how they apply to the bike through this app. So I'm gonna back out of here. All right, so right now it gives us current battery percentage, the odometer, a picture of the bike, and then you can go into bike settings. So if I hit start riding, you'll see that will start recording a ride, and you can use this as a larger display should you want to, but I'll pause this because I'm not going to do a full ride. And so we'll go to bike settings, and here you can adjust the name of your bike. Here's where you can select different modes. So right now it is in boost mode, but if I was to hit eco mode, that will just say the power output will change. And then you'll go to eco mode, or you can just hit the little cycle button on the left side of the control boost, and that will do the same thing. And you can see on both devices, they kind of update. Here is screen brightness. If I go to 1, it gets dark. If I go to auto, it'll lighten up based on the current conditions outside. Here's where you can change speed limits and thresholds. So you can make it as low as 12 miles an hour, meaning that's the max speed, or you can crank both the throttle and pedal assist up to 28 at max speed, or you can put it at any increment in between those two that you want based on what you want out of your bike. Here is the auto power off. So right now, once I walk away from the bike after 5 minutes of no activity, it will power off, but you can make that as long as an hour, or you can have it not shut off ever. Here is the auto light. So this is auto sensing. When it's darker outside, it will turn on, and when it's brighter outside, it will turn off. If you don't like the auto sensing, you just want manual control, you can flip that off. Same with cruise control. It's currently allowed on the bike. You just activate it by holding the button on the controls. But if you don't want it, you can just turn that off as well. Here is where you can do a throttle limit in torque mode or cadence mode. Turn signal click is that audible. It should be called turn signal beep because it's actually an audible beep when the turn signals are on. But if you don't like that sound and you want to just do it manually with the controls, you can turn this off. Here's where you can also sensor swap. You see it's on cadence now, but if we go over to torque, it will swap on both the display and the app. Here you can change between miles per hour and kilometers per hour, and that will change it on the screen as well. Here you can check firmware updates, and as you can see, it looks like the display, controller are up to date, but we do have a update for the battery, so I'll just hit update. It'll just say make sure it's stationary and in a safe environment. It is. Hit confirm, and it will go through the update process. Now, depending on how long this takes, we'll just jump back into it as soon as this is finished.
1 hour later.
All right, so this is finishing up. We're at 98%. It only took about maybe 5 full minutes to get that done. As you can see, it's finished. It says please restart the bike. So it's going to go through its own process. It did disconnect because we are restarting the bike. This is trying to reconnect to the bike, obviously, because the bike just powered down. So I will turn the bike back on. If I hold the right button. All right, and so the bike is powering back on, and this will reconnect. So we'll back out here. Oops, there we go. All right, so we're back into here. We were at firmware update, but that's fully done. The bike is fully updated. Your last option here is to unpair, which we're not going to do right now. And other than that, you just have your little account settings with all your info, and that really makes up the app. You can do everything from ride tracking to over-the-air updates and all the same tuning you can do in the display. It's nice being able to do it in the display or the app and not needing both or just relying on both to get it done. All in all, that made it up. I've had no issues with the app, and it's been pretty smooth overall. All right, guys, so as the person who built this bike and has built quite a few at this point, I wanted to share some insights and perspectives on this bike, how it stands from just a build perspective, from a mechanics standpoint, and from just a longevity and maintenance standpoint as well. So before I jump into it, I want to say thank you to Feedback Sports. They've sent us a couple of their Pro HD aluminum racks. These are lightweight, easy to fold up, and they do a good job of holding up these e-bikes, as well as some of their toolkits. If you like to do your own maintenance at home, or you're interested in a really solid bike rack, I'll put a link down in the description. Now, starting off with things I like about the build of the Breeze. So there's not a whole lot to go over. This bike's a fairly straightforward bike. As you can see, not a lot of crazy extra parts, so it'll be fairly quick. But the first things first, I like the through axle support on the front fork. This is going to create a better, more solid and stable and just more reliable contact point for this fork to wheel. Just a good solid support there that I like. I also like the fact that they went with an adjustable stem. A lot of times brands give a wide range of rider fit, but then they put a fixed stem on it, and there's no way to really dial in that fit that works best for individual riders. People have longer arms, shorter arms, longer torsos, shorter torsos, and the ability to adjust the stem on this bike really just makes it more flexible and adaptable to the individual rider. So it was a good use there. I also like the fact that they went with so many mounting points. So we've got mounting points on the fork, the front for a rack, basket, or accessory, fenders on both front and back, and mounting points for the bottle cages. They just did a lot of custom options here that are going to allow you to really rig it out the way you need to for whatever your day has in store for you. And then I also like the fact that this bike ships with 2 sensors. It's not really because just the fact that there's 2 sensors, that's kind of cool on its own. But from a mechanic standpoint and a longevity standpoint, they're basically 2 separate systems. You have a cadence system, and then you have a torque system built into the bottom bracket. And those 2 separate systems, from a longevity standpoint, in my opinion, if one of them was to go out over time, it's kind of like feeling like you have a backup motor activation sensor, which is pretty cool. Now, in terms of things that I would just alter or like to see changed in future revisions of this bike, just a couple small things. One is you can see here on the chain stays, you got already a lot of grease that has slapped down and dirt and grime, which is fine. That's just part of riding a bike. And they did put a piece of reflective film here, but that reflective film is only that wide, and the chain marks are this wide. So really it's about half the size it should be. And I'd like to see something a little bit more durable, maybe a rubber guard here, something that's going to have a little bit more depth to it and take a little bit more punishment than the single piece of translucent film they have on there now. I'd just rather see a more beefed up chainstay protection. And then the final thing was, as much as I like all the mounting points, quite a few of them were left just bare boned drilled as holes, which is not a huge deal, but over time, mud, dirt, grime, things are going to get in there, and you don't want to be trying to shove screws in there when you do eventually get fenders and racks. So we've got those spots here, and we've got them on the back side as well. I'd just rather see some plugs put in them, some screw heads put in them, something that will keep those areas secure until you do decide to use them. Other than that, It's been a really straightforward bike to ride. Very little moving parts aside from the obvious things, and overall it shouldn't be much to work on through the life of the bike. All right guys, we're out here on the Velotric Breeze. So I jumped on this and kind of just put my height to the test as far as fit compared to how they range it out on their rider height estimations. So I'm 5'11", and they say this bike will fit riders, you know, pretty north of 6 foot. So me at 5'11", I've got plenty of room. I've got a couple inches in the seat post left to go higher. I've got room in the adjustable stem to go higher or lower, and that will kind of dictate how the ride feels for you. But I'm pretty confident that if you're over 6 foot, you'll be able to find a good fit on this bike. And it's not something I can always say. So yeah, pretty happy to report that. The riding position is very upright and comfortable thanks to these like swept back bars. These cruiser bars bring the reach back to you, letting you sit more upright versus stretching you out and make you lean more forward. This bike's definitely upright, relaxed, comfortable, kind of what you'd expect with a Dutch style city cruiser bar like we have here. So the tires here are a Kenda 27.5 by 2.2. They have a nice commuter tread. They have very little rolling resistance. I haven't heard any noise out of them. They've been very quiet, very smooth. The seat's really comfortable on this bike, which, you know, when you see a rigid frame, a lot of people probably think, oh, it doesn't have a fork, it's not going to be as cozy and comfortable. But the bike really just rolls smoothly. Even felt bumps are mostly absorbed by the tires and the seat. You know, obviously within reason. If you get on some big bump or pothole, you're going to of course feel that. But as far as just day-to-day road imperfections and riding, the bike's pretty comfortable. There's not really a need for a suspension fork on this bike. It would just feel like overkill and it would add extra weight. So I think it was a good idea to omit it on this one. Plus, you know, if you want basically a bigger, heavier version of this, you go for the Discover 2. It's going to have a suspension fork, bigger tires, but it's also going to have a bigger weight. And that's kind of where this bike falls into Velotric's lineup. It feels like it's the Discover 2 for the folks who want all the features like the 750 watt motor, sensor swap technology, Apple Find My tech, health tracking, all the tech and coolness that comes with the Discover 2, same step through frame, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's packed up into a package that comes in a lot lighter, a lot easier to handle, a lot easier to move around. And that's going to appeal to a lot of people who don't want to deal with a big, heavy e-bike. This being basically a 50-pound e-bike, it's cutting almost 30 pounds off the Discover 2, which is pretty substantial. Now this has that 750 watt motor with 65 Newton meters of torque, slightly less torque, but again, on a 50-pound bike, that makes plenty of sense. I'm gonna peg this throttle here and just see how it does going up this little hill ahead. Let me get around this gentleman first. On your left, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right, let me make sure my throttle is limited. Yeah, let me adjust that real quick. So I'm just gonna hold the menu button. Speed limit, and you can see we were at 28, so I'm going to bring that down to 20 just to adhere to class 2 laws, and that'll make this whole thing easier. All right, so now I'm going to hold the throttle. We'll get up to 20. We're already off to about 7, 10, 15. Oh, the PAS3, that would do it. Anyway, we're now at 20 miles an hour. I'm going to hold this. There's a 9% grade up ahead. It's short and punchy, but it does give me a quick indication of how the bike handles a steeper incline. And then right beyond that, I've got a longer climb for us. That'll give us a more sustained climb and a longer test of the same thing. Let's see if it drops from 20.1. So we're just starting right now, and then that's the steep part up ahead. And so here we go up it, 20.1. All right, so we did drop about, looks like the lowest I'm seeing here is 17.3. So from 20.1 to 17.3, so about 2.8 miles an hour on that 9% drop. Now let's go to this next climb. It's right after this corner here, and that's going to allow us to go about a 1/4 mile climb, so a lot longer. And this one's got a less of a grade. It varies between 5 and 7%. but it's going to let us see on a sustained climb like that how it handles. So we are clear. All right, so I'm just gonna throttle only, no pedaling at all. All right, so we are 14 miles an hour. We are accelerating up the hill. 18 miles an hour, still accelerating up. 19, 20. All right, so we are holding 20 miles an hour. Our car here, still holding. We've not lost any speed. So 20.1. This is the steepest part right here. 20.0, 19.9, 19.8, 19.7, 19.32. We're back up to 3. So we only lost about a mile an hour total, 1 mile an hour on this sustained climb here. And I think that's a cool benefit of having a 50-pound bike with essentially a larger bike's motor. You got the 750 watt motor with 65 Newton meters of torque. It's a lot of muscle for a lightweight bike. And I think that's gonna go a long way in just how this bike feels as far as practicality. It's gonna feel like it's got pep when you want it. It's got longevity when you need it, 70 miles of range. But it's not gonna feel underpowered, which is a concern for a lot of folks. All right. So let's play with the braking. We've got 2 piston calipers on Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, and those are mated to 180 millimeter rotors. Pretty standard setup for an e-bike. On heavier e-bikes, those do well. I'm sure it'll be overkill on this bike. It's always felt really strong. Anyway, let's get to 20. Well, here we are at 24. Let me get past this lady. I don't want to freak her out slamming on the brakes. All right, so basically 24 miles an hour. 3, 2, well, we're slowing down. Let's get it up again. All right, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, the braking is really strong on this bike. But again, 2 piston calipers, 180 millimeter rotors on a 50-pound e-bike. It's gonna be really strong. So it ships as a class 2, but obviously you can switch to class 3. Got a little bit of honking in our brakes there. All right. So let me show you guys how the sensor swap works. And we'll play with that for a second as well. Let me just pull over here. Whew. All right, so let's hold the menu button. And that's going to take us into sensor swap. Right now it's on torque. Let's go to cadence, hit that again, and it'll say, do you sure you want to proceed? You'll use more battery consumption. That's because it's not dynamically adding power. It's just going to punch power to us. But we will confirm that. Did we do it? Yeah, we did it. All right. All right, so now we're on cadence sensor. So now when I basically start pedaling, it's just going to go. So about quarter turn right there, and it just jets off right there. Basically, no matter how slow I spin my legs on the pedals, it just keeps accelerating at full speed. That's what a cadence sensor does. It just gives you all or nothing power. And in some situations, people really like that. But if you're trying to go for like cycling, fitness, the real feel of riding a bike, that's where a torque sensor really shines really well. And so let's switch it back to torque sensor, and I'll show you that same slow pedaling and how it will not pick up speed the same way with a torque sensor. So to switch it, we'll just go right back in by holding mode, our menu, sensor swap, back to torque sensor, success, back out, and just like that, it is changed. So now I'll pedal slow. I can feel it going, but look, now I keep my legs soft on the pedals and my speed stays soft. 10 miles an hour, just chilling. Now, if I start pushing harder, we'll go pick right back up. So I start pedaling harder, more pressure, more speed, and then the bike picks up speed. And we can take this all the way to 28 miles an hour. So no trouble getting up to speed there. Yeah, with the lighter weight and having all the same tech that like the more premium models like the Discover 2 have, this is basically the Discover 2 in a lighter package. If you're into the Discover 2 and those nice feature-packed commuter bikes, well, want something a little bit more lightweight, this one's gonna do it. It's been comfortable, it's been smooth, no complaints. Let's go back and wrap this up. So there you have it, guys, the new Velotric Breeze. Hopefully that answered a lot of your questions about this. It's a new bike on the market, so I was kind of excited to share this with you guys today. Overall, it's gonna be a solid commuter for anybody who wants kind of that ride of a Discover 2, but doesn't want the size and heft of a Discover 2. So you can get a slimmed, kind of a more streamlined, slimmer, lightweight version of a Discover 2 with the Velotric Breeze. I feel like it fits well into their lineup as being just the lesser bulky and heavy version of a Discover 2 commuter. Now, this one, the only real complaints I had were pretty minor. I wished the fenders and racks were included, and I thought 15 riding levels was a bit too much, but really those are just small fries and more of personal preferences. Now, if you have a question about this bike, or if I didn't cover something you're interested in, drop it in the comments below. I will do my best to answer everybody, and if I don't know the answer, I'll reach out to the brand and try and figure it out before I reply to you. Now, if you haven't done so already, consider liking and subscribing to EBR, and until the next review, I will see you guys out on the trail.